welcome to She Builds, She Owns, She Invests. She is me and she is you. We're super excited for another webinar. We continue with our series, Cover Your Assets. All of us work so hard and we have worked so hard to be where we are today. So we just want to make sure our portfolios are covered. And so we have an amazing speaker today. I'll pass it back to you, Maria.
Thank you, Jasmine. Our speaker graduated from Texas A&M, followed by Southern Methodist University and a School of Law. She spent 10 years as a partner of a nationally reputed boutique law firm, and now she is a partner and business owner. She has learned how to run a business. In 2021, she opened AB Law PLLC to offer families, business owners throughout Texas customized personal guidance in their estate legacy business planning. She prides the firm on being an education focused with transparent flat fee pricing. She lives in Houston with her husband and 2 daughters. I'm here to announce we have Arati Bhattacharya. Oh my gosh, I said it wrong again. Say it for me one more time.
Bhattacharya.
One more time.
No one ever gets it right. Not a big deal.
I know, but
Bhattacharya.
Yes.
There you go.
And Arati, she got it. We are so excited to have you here. I'm so excited to learn. We've got so much to talk about, but I want to ask you this one question. Why do you think it's important that women take responsibility of their finances?
Wow. That is a loaded question, but one that I'm so glad you asked, because I am a huge proponent of women just like learning about things that we traditionally do not know about, right? Like in tradition, like if you go back to like the traditional way things were done, women were kept out of the finances. Women never took care of that. And we've seen a trickle of that into modern day society. And I really try to do whatever I can to flip the script on that, because if we're like running the household and we're running the kids, we're doing everything else. There's no reason that we can't own this piece too. Not only own it, like just like really like make it worthwhile for us, right? Own it, protect it, build it, create wealth. Like we can do this. And so I'm just really big on, my big thing is like educating and empowering women. I always say we can, my 2 girls, they say, we can do anything men can do, but better. So like, this is our opportunity to do that.
So we are so excited to have you here, because we know that you've been doing this pretty much your whole career, but a lot of the women who will have joined our group and are just getting started out really need to understand how estate planning helps with wealth building, because I think there's a misnomer almost where women are like, well, I don't have a ton to invest, or I'm not at a certain point. And so I guess I don't need to really worry about this until I get to X dollars or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you summarized it perfectly. I think there is a misconception that, oh, estate planning is only for the wealthy. And I see that as a huge failing of us as legal practitioners, because every family in America needs an estate plan. Okay. So at its bare bones, at its basic building blocks, we've got to protect our assets. We want to make sure that they go to the right people, right? We want it to go to our kids, or we want it to go to our families. So we want to protect that. And I just realized I probably said one of your buzzwords, which is why you guys got excited. I saw some smiles. We want to protect our people. If we have kids, that is a huge part of estate planning, okay? And we'll talk about this more in a little bit, but if we don't have guardians in place, the default is foster care for our children, okay? So like, that's why if there's moms on the call, super, super, super important we get that lined up. If we're business owners, we want to protect our nut. We want to protect that nest egg. How do we make sure there's not a fire sale at the time of our death, right? So there's so many different things that we should be thinking about. So again, I see that as a failing as legal practitioners, because the bare bones of estate planning is how do we protect what we have, and how do we pass it on correctly and not have it get deviated or go other directions to parties that shouldn't have it. Now, on top of that, yes, there's many additional things we can add on. We can add on asset protection. We can add on tax strategy. We can add on wealth generation building. There's so many cool things we can do, but every family and every person in America needs an estate plan. So this is where we start.
I'm glad you touched on that, because last week we learned why we should have a trust over a will and why it's important to start the process of estate planning. So we got that information really honed in and really hammered into us last week. But how do we really pass on wealth?
Yeah. So do you need me to give a recap on that, or are we good? Is everyone on this call
Yeah,
so we can go
well,
good?
Yeah.
I mean, like, how do we really pass it on to our kids? How can we do this? What are we supposed to be doing? Like, how can we do this?
Okay, so if we take a step back, when we talk about estate planning, you're talking about, and I think you guys have already covered some of this, but for those that weren't on the last time's call,
Right.
you can either have a will-based plan or you can have a trust-based plan. Okay, so you can have
Right.
one of those two. And that has nothing to do with how many dollars you have in your bank account. It has everything to do what your preferences and your priorities are. So we shouldn't tie it to dollars, right? Again, there was this misconception that trusts are only for the uber wealthy. That's actually not the case anymore. When we talk about wills, what a lot of people don't realize is if we have a will-based plan, we have to go through the court probate process. Our family has no choice but to enter the court process. If we think of an estate plan as a total cost of ownership thing, as we would perhaps a car, wills are typically the much more expensive option because you get a will, but then you have to hire a lawyer and take you through a probate process. Probate processes are public, so every dollar you own, where that dollar is parked, who it's going to, when they're getting it, is an airing of your financial laundry. Everyone sees that. Your assets get frozen until the court says now it's time to distribute it, right? So that's kind of how that works. And so when we have our sessions, we talk about that more extensively, but a will means you have to go through the court probate process. A trust is the legal system's answer to bypass that process. The trust is the legal system's answer to say, you know what, some families may actually want that privacy, the flexibility, the control, the immediate passing of assets. And so it's a legal vehicle to do exactly that. So that's the wills versus trust distinction. Within the trust itself, if we're talking about ways to generate wealth or pass on wealth, we should realize that part of protecting your wealth is protecting, or keeping your wealth is protecting your assets, right? So there are asset protection strategies. For example, if there's a lawsuit or a car accident, how do we make sure that our dollars are protected? If say we die and our husband or our partner was to get married to, partner number two, right? If our spouse dies before partner number two, there's a good chance that our children could be completely carved out because partner number two would take the wealth and pass it on perhaps to their stepchildren, right? So there's ways you can get carved out. So a large part of it is asset protection. There's tax strategy you can definitely build in if you want to bypass all capital gains over the course of 2 lifetimes. We can do that. There's wealth generation. There's lifetime trusts again where we can give our dollars to our kids protected. So there's just a lot of things you can do within a trust to continue to generate wealth for your family.
And so it sounds like it's complicated.
I mean, I wouldn't suggest you DIY it for sure.
and
Just a little.
and I'm a keep it simple girl.
Fair,
Even
totally
though
fair.
even though I have an AV trust, and I know you know what that is, and all kinds of complications. I think it would be helpful for anybody on the call, and even for me, to kind of just walk through some of the first steps that you need to take to begin an initial estate plan or initiate the process. What things should the ladies on the call or listening later, what things should the ladies do or kind of put in mind to initiate the whole process of doing an estate plan? Because obviously when you weigh having all of your dirty laundry in front of the court versus having a trust, they're going to say, well, yeah, I don't want probate, I want it not to work like that.
Yeah.
So help us understand some of the steps to take to initiate the estate planning process.
Yeah, well, I think the first is obviously trying to find a lawyer that aligns with you, right? I think it's really important to start gathering and consolidating your assets. So a part of our process, for example, is when we have a client that is interested in going down this path, we send them an intake worksheet essentially, where they kind of list out all of their assets. And our process is educational in that they fill out that homework before we ever meet. And then we kind of look at everything and ask questions and figure out, what may or may not make sense for their profile. And we kind of talk them through the pros and the cons of wills versus trusts and probate and what potential other sub-trusts or strategies may make sense for them or not. But yeah, you definitely there's a couple of things you should be thinking about. And again, a good estate attorney should walk you through these pieces. You obviously want to be thinking about consolidating all of your assets, right? You want to be thinking about gathering all of it up, because the truth is if we don't consolidate our assets and our families don't know what we own, the default for those assets becomes the Department of Unclaimed Property. Okay, so in Texas, for example, that's already $6 billion, primarily funded by people whose families just didn't know what they owned, right? If I hadn't done this for my family, there's no way I would know how many random annuities and CDs my mom had all over the state of Texas. Like, I just literally would not have known. I would have certainly not known how much stuff she had with New York life insurance. So anyway, so that's why it's just kind of important to consolidate our assets so our families know what we have. And then, again, a thorough estate plan outside of the asset piece is, you want to think about, power of attorneys, right? You want to think about financial power of attorney. Those are people who can reach into your bank account when you can't reach into it yourself. You want to think about healthcare agents. Those are people who can speak at your bedside when you can't speak for yourself. If you take it a step further, you want to think about health, like an advanced healthcare directive. That's like a living will. How do you feel about organ donation, life support, right? Because that's when we think about estate planning, we think about, again, our assets. We think about our people. How are we going to protect them? You want to think about, hey, if you have young kids, who are we going to put in place for them, for their guardians, right? Who's going to take care of your kids when you can't take care of your kids? You're going to want to think about, how do you want to distribute those dollars to your kids? Do you want to distribute them outright, or do you want to give it to them in a lifetime trust so it's protected? Sometimes for our young kids, I say this all the time, if my parents had even left me $100,000 at the age of 18, I would have made some seriously different life choices, right? So it's just good to think about how you want to pass that wealth on, and what decisions you want to make. When our kids are younger, we're trying to protect them from themselves. As our kids get older, yeah, you want to protect them from external influences, right? So those are just like some moving things to kind of think about. If you're a business owner, you want to start thinking about, and these are all things to think about, like just planting the seed now so you kind of understand like the realm of all of it. If you're a business owner, you probably want to think about, hey, what's your long-term plan with your business? If your long-term plan is to sell your business, maybe how do we get it ready for that? But if otherwise, what are you going to do if something happened to you tomorrow, right? How do you make sure that the primary bulk of your business and those dollars are retained for your family, right? So just some moving things to think about, all that kind of fall under the umbrella of estate planning. Does that answer your question? Is that what you were trying to get me to say?
Yeah, I think that's a really good start, that you want to look at things holistically, obviously. And so I think those were some really good tips, for the ladies to start thinking, because like you said, it's not just about it is about the assets, but it's not just about the assets, right? So
Yeah, and actually, I'll add a couple of things on there too. There's a couple of things that we do at our firm that are fairly unique, because the things that I've learned over the course of time are where there's like holes in estate plans. So for example, guardians, like I said earlier, if we don't have guardians, the default is foster care. And if you think about it, it makes sense. If you and your partner were in a car accident, or if you're a single parent, you're in a car accident, a first responder is not going to make the decision of where should this child go, right? So that's where guardians are really important. But if your guardians don't live close to you, say they live further away, then the way that works is they'll still go to foster care until the guardians show up. So our firm, for example, we do short-term guardians and long-term guardians. Again, this is one of those things where I just think it's so important for women to know. Like, this is kind of the more we know, the more in control we can be. I'm a huge believer in, like, there's power in planning, right? Like, get ahead, stay ahead, be proactive. Because the more proactive we can be, the more we can protect, the more we can preserve, the more we can build, right? So that's something to think about. Also, like at our firm, we do these complimentary 3-year reviews. And the reason that's important is if you're going to do an estate plan, you want to see life changes, right? Life changes, relationships change, asset positions change, things change. And you want to make sure that when the time comes for you to have to actually use the estate plan, which is hopefully decades, many, many, many decades from now, you want to make sure that it actually works, right? What we see happen a lot is people are like, oh, crap, I haven't touched that estate plan in 30 years. Is it still relevant? Well, a lot of stuff has probably changed since then, right? So there's real value in continuing to maintain the plan. The other thing is a lot of people are like, oh, I think my mom had one of those, but I don't know where it is and I don't know what to do next. And so that's, I mean, we hear that all the time, right? You see that in the movies all the time. Something our firm does is we hold them electronically indefinitely. And we actually, with our clients' permissions, contact people they've named in their plans. And that way, when something awful happens, our clients, people in their lives know, oh, this lady has them and she can help us roll it out, right? And so those are just things to be thinking about, because you can certainly do an estate plan, but those are questions. You know, if you're in Texas, I'm happy to talk to anyone on the call and we can help. If you're outside of Texas, estate planning is actually state specific. And so those are questions I just want you guys to be thinking about, just again, from like, there's power in knowing, right? Like you don't know what you don't know. And so you should be asking questions about, how is this plan being maintained? How can I make sure that people are going to know where it is? How can I make sure that my family's going to know where my assets are? Just things of that sort.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because there's power in knowing and power in and understanding all of that. So I live in Indiana. I'm not in Texas, and let's pretend that I have children, because I don't, but let's pretend. What questions am I going to ask someone? Because you are not going to be the one to help me. Unfortunately, you have all the answers, and I see you have it all planned out, and you know about this every 3 years and the changes. Like, what should I be asking to my lawyer to protect my families, to protect my children, and to make sure that they're not going into foster care? Like, what should I be asking? Because if they don't have my best interest at heart, how do I make sure they do?
Well, and so I'll say, I don't think it's that they wouldn't have your best interest in heart, because I think that they honestly probably do. But I will also say, I think we do like, we have very long-term relationships with our clients. We see them as indefinite relationships. That's not traditional for this. That's not normal for this space. So, right, if you are in another state, the questions I think you should be asking are guardianship related, right? If you have kids, how do I make sure that, what are all the documents that we're doing for the kids, right? Or do we have long-term guardians? Are there going to be short-term guardians? What happens worst case scenario if your guardians live further away? How does your family know what you have? So our firm does pretty comprehensive asset inventories that we continue to update over the course of time, so our clients' families know what they own. Chances are that most estate planning firms aren't going to do that. So I would really encourage you guys to maintain those assets yourselves so that they are easy to locate. Again, you know, this is not something my parents did, and I could actually see as a family member how difficult it was to try to find stuff, right? So try to maintain those assets if you can. And if the firm doesn't hold assets or doesn't hold the plans electronically, which more likely than not, they will not hold them electronically for you, try to find a place that you can hold your documents electronically and let your family members or people you are naming in your plan know where those are. I think those are some ways that potentially you could bridge that gap to make sure there's not, again, a case of where are the documents and what do we do next?
Okay. And then when you said a short-term guardian, how far away, if I had a guardian in another state or even like an hour away, is that the need for a short-term guardian?
Yeah, I tell clients, the threshold is someone who's within 30 minutes of you. So if in your greater metropolis, if they live in your greater metropolis area, great. But if your actual guardians don't live in the greater metropolis area that you live in or within 30 minutes of you, short-term guardians don't have to be, I mean, they obviously have to be people you trust, right? But they can be, neighbors, daycare teachers, school teachers, someone in your church community. I mean, this is, again, a very short-term appointment until long-term guardians can arrive.
Okay. Well, that's good. I'm glad we're asking these, because I needed to know them as well. And with like a tax strategy and asset protection, are there certain questions that we should be asking to make sure that our lawyers are getting that as part of our estate planning? Is there a certain question I should ask?
Yeah. So
when it comes to taxes?
Whenever we think about estate planning, you should think about it as what happens. Okay, so I'm just going to assume we're talking about a married couple right now. If we're not talking about a married couple, we'll talk about that in a second. But if we are talking about a married couple, because right, for right now, we'll talk about a married couple, or you have to think about things as what happens after the first death and what happens after the second death, because those are actually very, very different. And so there's a lot of strategy and asset protection that can happen between the two. For example, kind of like I was saying earlier, if a spouse dies and there's a second remarriage, how do we make sure the estate from that first marriage, right? The marriage that you may be in right now, how do we make sure that's protected and that goes to your children? It doesn't get misdirected unintentionally to future spouse and future spouse's kids, right? That's really, really important, right? There's things you can do with the tax position between the first death and the second death. If we're not talking about a married couple and we're talking about a single person that has children, or maybe it's not children you're leaving to, maybe it's nieces and nephews. You want to ask questions about how you can give that money to them protected. So examples of that are, I'll talk about my two children. I have two girls, right? So how do we make sure that if my daughters get married and then divorced, how do I make sure they don't lose it in a divorce, right? Or if my children end up being independently wealthy, how do I make sure that my inheritance doesn't compound on top of their already existing estate to create a larger tax value, right? Tax value position. How do I make sure that if they, make a risky business decision, or there's creditors or a lawsuit, how can I keep the inheritance protected so that those dollars stay theirs and theirs alone and aren't exposed to a court, right? Because there's a very skillful and specific way to do that. Because when the court looks, so I used to be a litigator in my previous life, but when the court looks at all of your assets, how do we define this inheritance so that it looks separate from the rest of your assets, right? It's not part of what is exposed. If there's a $5 million verdict against you, right? How do you make sure that, the inheritance isn't a part of that? How do we structure it to make it look like you don't have completely unrestricted access over it, right? So again, it just takes a little bit of skillful tweaking on that side, but it can be done.
So just being able to ask those questions and just be upfront, be an open book, say, these are the things I want, and really thinking it through. I didn't even think about, children's children or children maybe having money. So that was a good point. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there's so many things. Every person is unique and has their own unique circumstances. But let's just give a couple examples and you can, basically kind of help walk us through another scenario, if you will. But say someone passes and they have investments that were never delegated to anyone via a will or a trust or anything like that. What can they do? Because unfortunately, we're seeing a lot of sudden deaths. Toby Keith, unfortunately, passed today. Out of nowhere, right? And let's just pretend he didn't have a will or a trust.
Which would be a hot mess.
What would his people be doing at this point? I mean, I'm obviously grieving, but at the end of the day, what happens?
Yeah.
What happens next?
So again, this is where we look at family composition, right? So if someone is married, so I'll start off by saying, again, this is where there's so much power in planning, because we can get ahead of it when we plan. We can be proactive. We can protect more. We can stay in control. We are the ones that are making decisions. So, I mean, even just as simple as if you don't have guardians picked out for your children, I'll just put this out there just for purposes of illustration. If we don't have guardians picked out for our children, like I said, they go to foster care. And then you have to find a spot on a judge's calendar. So, and then a hearing spot opens up and the judge has to hear testimony and witnesses, and then the judge gets to decide where your kids are going to go, right? So I know some of these decisions are really, really hard to make, but I always say, we're going to make better choices than someone who doesn't even know our families, right? We're going to make better choices than some random judge. So that's just an example, right? So let's go back to like the example of someone's passed away and they don't have any documents, right? So okay, hopefully they had some documents, but if they don't have any documents, then we have no choice but to go through probate. And things are sometimes a little bit easier. If we're talking about a married couple, it can sometimes be a little bit easier if the first person in that married couple passed, because we can put forth an argument with the court that these people, assuming this is the set of circumstances, these people may have been married a long time, the natural course of what should have happened is that the spouse should assume the rest of it, and so on, right? And in the community property state, for example, we can say, oh, this should flow to the spouse, and then hopefully spouse number 2, the remaining spouse, will do their planning and get ahead of it, right? That's what we hope will happen. Of course, if that doesn't happen, then we have no choice but to go through probate. And every state has what you consider natural intestate laws, which is this is how things are supposed to pass, right? So ideally, things pass to the spouse first, and then they go down to the kids. And if there are no kids, then they go up to the parents, and then they go a little bit further out, like siblings and nieces and nephews and so on, right? So there is a structure that the courts follow, but I do want to stress that that is not automatic. Nothing happens automatically. It all requires a court probate process. It requires you going to the court and filing a whole bunch of documents and getting a probate attorney. None of it's easy and none of it's straightforward, even though there's an estate code in place in every state, it still requires the involvement of the court and a judge and a lawyer. And I will tell you that anyone who has ever been through a probate process will tell you it sucks. Everyone will tell you it's financially exhausting, emotionally exhausting. And so if we can get ahead of it, we're all better for it. I will tell you, when I lay out stuff for my clients, like I said, we don't charge for any of our phone calls or our emails or our sessions. We really do treat them as educational sessions. And if our clients decide, yep, we want to move forward with this, then we will start designing and talk fee structure, right? But I will tell you, after we've done all of that, over 90% of our clients go the trust route, right? Because they're like, yeah, we don't want to do probate. Probate sucks. Probate is expensive. Probate is involved. Probate kind of removes a lot of the control from you, right? So power and planning.
I love that. I love that. It's just the theme, power and planning.
There we go.
Just avoid all of the confusion and issues. So we are going to open it up. I know you guys all have questions. I'm glad that Barbie already has a meeting with you. That's awesome. What about if we don't live in Texas or in your area? Are we able to book a call with you too if we have some questions?
You could, but I'm going to tell you that it may not. If you live in Texas, I'm happy to talk to anyone. These are actually fairly state-specific issues, and there are community property states and there are non-community property states. So I could actually run afoul of giving you advice that doesn't apply to your state. So really, if you live in a different state, you should be talking to an attorney in that state, because I don't want to. Again, these laws really do differ from state to state. So it would probably be, it wouldn't be wise for me to be giving you legal advice if you live in another state and I don't know those rules. Awesome. Like there's general big picture stuff, but the specifics are going to be different from state to state.
Makes sense. So any questions, we'll get them. You start raising your hand. You can come off mute, whatever you want. We can ask them for you if you aren't able to, but this would be the time to get those burning questions answered.
While we're waiting, because I'm sure some people are contemplating how they want to ask.
Yes.
I have a question for you because
Sure.
I think there may be some women on the call or who watch this replay that have gone through the process of putting an estate plan together, but maybe they didn't get a prenup and they got divorced, or maybe it's been 15 years of marriage and the kids are older now or whatever, and they paid a lawyer, however much to put the plan together back when, and now they're sitting there 15 years later going, there maybe need to be updates or changes. How do you typically go through that process?
So I absolutely think that, estate plans do need some TLC and some nurturing because things change, right? All of a sudden, right. You may have done it when you only had 2 kids and now you may have 3, or, right. Or it's been 20 years and you're in a very different asset position, right? So I would definitely check in with your lawyer that you drafted it with. Our firm reviews estate plans all the time, drafted by other attorneys. And we just kind of go through our regular process, right? And again, this is where there's value in, like I said, we do these complimentary 3-year check-ins with our clients. Things can change, right? We just don't know. I mean, something to keep in mind all the time with clients is there's something called an estate tax in America, okay? And right now it's super, super high because it's tied to the numbers that were under the Trump presidential administration, which are the highest that we have ever historically seen. They're at 12.5 million a person. Okay, that's really, really ridiculously high. Before him, historically, all presidents, regardless of Democrat or Republican, were closer to the 5 million mark. Okay, 5 million might sound like a lot of money, but estate tax values are calculated differently than net worth values. So estate tax values, for example, counts the full value of your home without a mortgage tied to it. Say you live in a home that might be one day $1 million, you may still have a 700K note on it. It doesn't matter. It's being counted as 1 million. Say you have a $2 million life insurance policy. That's already 3 of your 5 million, right? And you haven't even started counting retirement and so on, right? And so it is not inconceivable that every single person on this call would at some point in their lifetime have an estate tax value. That's why it's really important to continue checking in on where your assets are and how they align with your plan. Because, you know, I like to think of foundational estate planning up until the $10 million mark, if we're talking about a married couple, up until the $5 million mark, if we're talking about a single person. Beyond that, we need to go into advanced estate planning. We have the tools to be able to protect the dollars above those thresholds. But again, we come back to having to be really proactive and intentional, because if we're not proactive and intentional, 50% of everything above that goes to the IRS. So let's say, you know, like even I'll give you guys an example. Say there's a husband and wife couple, and let's just say the wife has 8 million to her name, the husband has 2 million to his name. It's kind of a use it or lose it. So the wife, if she has 8 million to her name, the 3 million above her 5 million will get taxed at 50%. So there's a $1.5 million tax on the estate, right? If you are a serial real estate investor, chances are you start adding all your real estate properties up without notes tied to them, and you're going to be pretty high in the millions. It's going to happen, right? Again, these are not things to scare you, but I hope that they certainly encourage you to think about estate planning, because your families and you would want to preserve all of that additional value and keep it in the estate rather than giving 50% of it to the IRS. So that's kind of where we want to be very, very thoughtful.
Yeah, I love my country, but I don't want my government having all the dollars I acquired over my years.
You know, Candace, your
Candace,
point.
this is a recorded line.
No, but so to her point, there is actually a Supreme Court opinion that says something to the effect of, you can be a patriot to your country, but you don't have to owe anyone more taxes than you should have to pay. And that's okay.
Amen.
Like, it's okay to say that, right? It's okay to, there is no obligation that you have to pay into a certain tax bracket if there are rules that allow you to discount those taxes, right? Or lower your tax position.
And that's why we're all in real estate.
There you
Well,
go.
I mean, we are all invested in real estate. Most of us on this call, myself included. What are some things that we should be prepared for that we might not be considering, since we all do have real estate assets?
Well, I'm actually, you know, as you guys said that, you're right. We're talking to a group of real estate women, which I love. That is so awesome, because we're totally shaking it up. So that's awesome. But something to think about as real estate investors. Okay, so I'm just going to give you guys an example here, something that estate planning can do for you. Say you bought a property and it was 500,000 the day you bought it. Okay, and then let's say at the first death. Now again, we're just assuming a married couple, but we don't have to. But for now, we will. Let's say at the first death, that property was worth 1.5 million, because we live in a place that really appreciates. Let's say at the second death, the home was worth 2.5 million. Okay, so now that piece of property has appreciated $2 million. Through estate planning, we can completely bypass paying capital gains on that property for that $2 million, okay? So you won't have to pay it, your kids won't have to pay it, we can completely sidestep it. And that's true for all real estate, and it's true for all highly appreciating assets. So that's not just real estate, that is brokerage accounts, stocks, so on and so forth. So that's why we always ask our client to give us, to fill out a worksheet that shows us their asset portfolio. Because for clients that are real estate investors or in the stock markets, we can usually save them hundreds and thousands of dollars, if not millions, right? If you just think about it, if you have 3 properties and we can bypass all capital gains from the day that you bought that property to the time of the second death, we can easily save hundreds of thousands of dollars. So
great.
again, that's kind of where, you know, the planning itself, if it sounds like it's expensive now, I
Just
mean,
wait.
there's a lot of value there.
So we do have a question. Barbie
Yeah.
had asked, how do you safeguard pets when
I'm
you pass?
so glad you asked that, Barbie. So, yeah, the way we think about pets, I'm a huge pet lover, but unfortunately in America, we think about pets as personal property. They are actually considered personal property, right? So, yes, we actually ask, you may have actually seen this in our worksheet already since you have our worksheet, but we do ask, hey, who do you want to leave your pets to? And for everything on our worksheet, whether it's guardians or who you're leaving your pets to or trustees, we always have one person with two backups because we never know how life works out, right? I don't want you to have to redo your documents if someone predeceases you or skips the country or whatever, right? But yes, so for pets, most often I like to think of it as what we call a specific distribution. So say Barbie says, hey, I want to leave these pets to my cousin or whatever, right? And then we'll also have the conversation of, okay, are you just going to leave them to your cousin as is and all is well? Or do you want a stipend to follow the pet, right? Maybe you want to say, hey, for as long as this pet is living, I'm going to pass a $5,000 pet stipend along to my cousin. So that, that may pay for vet bills and food and so on, right? And then that stipend lapses when my pet passes, right? So yeah, that is definitely a part of estate planning for your pets. And some people have like, I'll just finish this real fast. Some people have like really fancy pets, right? Like they've got like just really bougie pets. And so sometimes those really fancy pets kind of have their own pet trust with them, right? If you've got like horses or a really fancy breed of a dog or something. But for most people, the pet doesn't need to have their own trust. For most people, we can have it be a specific distribution with a stipend tied to it because I try to be a realist and, there's no need for overkill if the overkill is not required.
But your pet could have a trust.
Yes, your pet could have a
What you're
trust.
saying.
I mean, there
just
are
like
some
the
people
commercial, just like the
Yeah.
commercial with the cat. The cat gets the
Oh,
house in the summer house.
Yeah,
I love that.
it's a
Oh
thing.
my gosh. All right, we do have some questions. I'm going to read them.
Sure.
So, do you still bypass taxes if your properties are in an LLC and the LLC is assigned to a trust?
Yeah. Because, right. So the way we think of LLCs is they continue running the exact same way that they are, but the LLC, we think of it as a black box that's placed inside the trust. And then, you just continue to administer the way that you would. But yeah, all those same tax benefits are available.
All right.
Because you are 100%. I mean, again, these are just like different legal layers we create, but at the end of the day, you're still 100% owner of that LLC that then owns that property and so on. So at the end of the day, the net is you are still 100% owner of that piece of property. And so it conveys.
Awesome. I'm going to ask Amy's question.
Sure.
What are your thoughts once your children are over the age of 18, because she has two in college, with regard to estate planning? What do you do when they're 18?
So the only piece that doesn't disappear, but the only piece we then aren't talking about is the guardianship piece, because now we have full-grown adults, right? So we're not talking about the guardianship piece anymore. But it doesn't change the other things that we still need to consider. For example, if worst case scenario, something were to happen, how and when do our kids get our dollars, right? So one of the, the most basic default way to do it is to give our dollars to our kids outright. So say you, just making up numbers, say you have a $4 million estate because you got lots of real estate in there, right? Just making that up. You have two kids out, if we don't do any additional planning, when our kids turn 18, the pot splits in half and goes 2 million to each kid outright in their bank account. That's not protected in any way, right? I usually try to tell parents, hey, I just don't really think that's the best idea. That's a lot of money that can really, financial maturity is like real life and well at that age, right? So I'm like, at a bare minimum, we should do something called ages and stages, which is give maybe a third at 18, a third at 21, a third at 25, spread it out, right? But the alternative to that is creating a lifetime trust for each child. And again, when they're younger, it's the idea of us protecting them from themselves because, hey, we don't want them to blow all their money and go to Vegas or Monte Carlo or buy a yacht or whatever. But as they get older, it's, still maybe protecting them from themselves if they don't have good money habits, but also protecting them from those lawsuits and those divorces and so on. So with all of our lifetime trusts, I actually have created this document that I call a trustee distribution guideline document. Okay. And I actually give it to our clients in a Word form because things change, but it basically highlights what your main, like the big, your larger life decisions are. Like, for example, things like, or larger life expenditures. So things like buying a house, buying a car, education, so on and so forth, right? Like, how would you want your dollars to be spent, right? And so you may say, you may want to put on that sheet, yeah, you can, you can spend 100% of your dollars on education. That's fine. And maybe you can use it to buy a car, but don't buy a brand new Range Rover with it, right? Limit that car to like $35,000, right? Get yourself a trusty Toyota or whatever. Or you may say, you can use this money for a wedding, but don't have that wedding exceed 40K, right? Like you can set parameters around how you want those dollars to be spent if you so choose. And so I usually give that to clients in a Word document so that they can keep changing it, because your opinions change on things over the course of time, and then we incorporate it by reference. All of that is still really relevant if you have, college age kids, or, even kids that are in their 30s, right? Just all good things to be thinking about.
I have a follow-up question because I have an over the 18 as well in college. And my legal firm recommended that we do powers of attorney and medical powers of attorney and all of these other things. So what other things, when your kid becomes legally an adult, because Michigan State University will not tell me my son's grades because he's an adult, even though I'm paying, which is ridiculous to me. But
totally ridiculous.
What are those kinds of things that we as parents with adult children should think about protecting them, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So as soon as we have families where their kids turn 18, we do start telling them. So, right now we're talking about our estate planning, but for them specifically, you want to put some powers of attorney in place. So healthcare power of attorney is pretty important, right? So you can actually, speak at their bedside for them if they can't speak for themselves. A HIPAA waiver so that you can actually get those medical records if you need to be able to get those medical records, or have those conversations if you need to. And then a financial power of attorney. I mean, they probably don't have bukus of money sitting around, but if you needed to have that financial power of attorney to terminate a lease or something to that effect, terminate a cell phone plan. The powers of attorney are mostly what we think of when we're thinking about young adult age children.
Right.
I can't get them to give you your kids' college grades though. Like that I can't make happen.
I know.
Are you sure?
It's like
there isn't like something. I mean, we can really control like what day they buy a car and how much they spend on it, but we really can't get the grades.
I mean, yeah, if you want to fight the university on it, but it's pretty stinking tricky, right? It's pretty hard.
Ridiculous.
Yeah. And also, to be super clear, the way that the power of attorney works, you'd be like, oh, well, I have all these power of attorneys. Can I not get that information? The way that power of attorneys work is they only work upon incapacitation. Ideally, you never use them. And if you do, it's for a very short period. It's for a period that starts at incapacitation, which means that you're in a coma, you can't speak for yourself, till, hey, you either come out of that period or you die, right? So it extinguishes upon death. So it really is for like worst case scenario. It's not hey, I have it in my hand now, I can do whatever I want with it.
Right.
Oh, good.
Oh yeah, you can get a signed FERPA at like the college level. That's outside the world of estate planning, but I know some parents do that.
No, yeah, while they think on more questions, I just want to make sure you guys are aware that we have some upcoming events in Houston, Austin, and Detroit. For the one in Houston, our artist, she's gonna be with us, so be sure to join us. You can meet her in person, ask her some questions, because I know more questions will arise, so she will be there in our branch. We're gonna be in Austin as well on the 17th, 18th Houston, and Metro Detroit is gonna be the
24th. The 24th. Yeah, we're gonna be in Clawson.
Awesome. So I'm gonna put the links here. Be sure to join us, invite friends, the more the merrier.
Yes, and also on the 24th, if you're not in Detroit and you're gonna be in Phoenix at Race Fest, I will be there, and we're doing a she event as well. So there's a lot of ways to get in contact with us. If you love what you see on our Zoom calls and you want to meet us in person, we'd love to meet you. We'd love to connect with you. So we've got 2 times in Texas coming up, one in Phoenix, one in Detroit. I hope one of those works for you. If not, let us know where you are that you'd want to meet, and we'll try to make it work.
Absolutely. And also, just a friendly reminder, if you guys are looking to invest, we have an investment opportunity open for accredited investors in San Antonio. You can reach out to any of us and we'll be more than happy to give you all the information and just connect with us. The more we know you, the more we can help you. So talk to us about your real estate journey, your real estate goals, and let us be part of this. Any other questions, Arati? Anything else that you want to add?
No, yeah, I guess we didn't really talk a whole bunch about real estate today, but there's a lot of things you can do with LLCs to protect your real estate. So if you have questions about that, if you have questions about anything you've heard today, whether it's about estate planning or real estate, how do you protect your real estate? How do you protect your family? How do you protect your assets? If you are in Texas, yeah, please, I guess my little QR code, feel free to book a 15-minute call with me. I love talking to folks. I love giving you the information that you need. If we can help you, great. If not, that's fine too. Like, I am more than happy to kind of share and give you some tips, because again, the estate planning piece is important. There's power in the knowing, there's power in taking control of the financial narrative, but also as real estate investors, there's so much you can do with LLC protections to protect your property and protect you guys. So yeah, happy to have the conversation.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for all the information. This has been very helpful. We are just gonna continue to learn, and I'm blessed to be in Houston, so I'll be reaching out to you pretty soon. All of us invest in real estate, so our portfolios are growing, so that's a good problem to have.
It's a good problem. Yeah.
It is. Yes, thank you. I'll get our music going. It was so great to have all of you. We will see you on February. I think it is the 20th. February 20th will be our next call, and we have someone special coming. We are doing our third and final of this series, Cover Your Assets. We hope to see you there, and we hope to see you in person. If that is the next
superstar coming. We have a superstar coming.
Ooh.
Yeah, to finish out our Cover Your Assets. This has been my favorite. I've learned so much. I hope you guys have too. If you have any questions, please reach out. We'd love to connect you. Thank you so much, everyone.
Oh.
Yeah, she wants to know about Dallas.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm thinking I'll be there for the book launch on the 8th. So maybe we do something in Dallas on the 8th of March.
Yeah, that's when the
Brenda's
rewatch,
gonna
right?
be here as well. Brenda,
Mhm.
McGann, I'm gonna be
Yeah.
in Idaho. If you guys want to come to Idaho as well.
Yeah,
But
might as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, might as
Rock,
well.
I think we're gonna do
Idaho and Dallas on the 8th.
yeah.
Oh,
so-
she's wanting to
so
know
there's a-
about the book launch. We gotta send her the book launch info.
Okay, hold on. I'm right there. Should be closer. All right. This book, The Real Woman in Real Estate, this is going to be volume 2, is going to be launching on March 8th. And there's going to be like a book launch party. And we'd love to see you there. I'll be there. I'm not in book 2, but I'm going because I just can't get enough of the real women in real estate. So I will be there. So let's plan something. Let's get together, because I think you're right. I think we need one in Dallas.
Yes, thank you. We need a she brunch in Dallas. When will we have a she brunch in Dallas?
Yes, it might be like a lunch, or maybe we'll see. I'll talk to McGanna, but yes, I think you're right. 100%. Let's get Dallas going.
All right, we're super excited. Well, we will keep you posted. Stay tuned on our WhatsApp group and our Facebook group. That's when we share all the events coming up. So yeah, thank you so much.